Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the show. Happy Tuesday. I hope you guys have had a beautiful weekend coming into a new week. Of course, very busy, right? It's kind of like for some of your kids are back in school, some of you are still waiting to go back to college, but wherever you're tuning in, thanks so much for joining. Let's get started.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun. Award-winning financial pro. Get ready. Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Welcome, friends, and thanks so much for joining us today and joining us live. Happy Tuesday, wherever you're joining me from. Don't be shy, jump in, say hello. Let me know how your week is going. And for those of you who are tuning in live, I see a lot of you. Thank you so much for making the time. For those of you who are brand new to the show, I'm Winnie, your host and award-winning financial pro, a Forbes contributor, and a CNBC council member and contributor. And it is awesome to be here with you. Let's tell you where the market is because I think you like to hear the news. It's been a good day for the market. So Dow is currently up 389 points. Nasdaq is up 384 points as well, and the S&P 500 is currently up 85 points. We've got a little bit more than 10 minutes left before the market is going to be closing. So I think it's pretty safe to say we're probably going to see a positive day on the financial markets in terms of closing today. Now, of course, the Dow has surged, which we talked about, and part of that is because the producer price index, the PPI, rose by just 0.1% last month in July, which is below expectations, which actually signals that inflation pressures might be behind us, particularly in the service sector. And so that good news, a lower than expected PPI, definitely gives investors hope that inflation might be cooling, which could also translate to perhaps lower interest rates in the near future. And I know many of us are hoping that's the case in September. So now it's a 3-year inflation outlook does hit its record low in the New York Fed consumer survey as well. And I want to talk about this. The New York Fed survey does reveal yet a 3-year a low 3-year inflation outlook. Actually, this was shared on CNBC from my friend Jeff Cox. So the latest survey of consumer expectations shows that the inflation outlook of 2.3% is the lowest since the survey began in 2013. Now, while the 3-year outlook has improved, of course, consumers can still expect inflation to remain somewhat elevated at 3% above the over the next year or so. Of course, people are hoping for an inflation rate of 2 to 3%, but I think we can all agree, given how high inflation was just not that long ago, the 3% is just fine. Now, let's talk about household spending, though. Based on the survey, it's projected to increase by 4.9%, which you might say, well, household spending increases is never a good thing. But actually, this would make it the lowest rate since April of 2021, indicating once again a potential easing in how you and I are spending money. We're just going to perhaps spend less than we did earlier in the pandemic. Now, consumers, of course, are anticipating lower increases in gas and food prices, but they are expecting higher costs for things such as medical care and, of course, the cost of sending your kids to college and, of course, rent as well. So there's definitely some mixed expectations in terms of the increase of cost, inflationary levels, depending on who you're talking to and, of course, what they're going to be shopping for in the future. So, despite a rising unemployment rate, consumer confidence in job security is also positive and is up. So, more people they really don't think that they're going to be losing their job, and they actually think there's a higher likelihood of people voluntarily leaving a job. So, having the choice to be able to leave the job to do something else versus the company letting them go. And the survey actually suggests that the Federal Reserve may actually be closer to achieving its inflation goals, which of course could influence positively to decreasing interest rates next month in September, which is something I think that is very much sort of banked into the financial markets today because we've been talking that for some time. And speaking of things that are big, this is a big one that's been trending today. I don't know if you heard about that. For those of you who've been to a Starbucks lately, or you've been to a Chipotle lately, you might feel like your experience is somewhat different at the two locations, or maybe depending on your neighborhood, it's not that different. There's an article that came out of Axios, and actually, there's many articles on the different financial publications about this. Starbucks has, in fact, appointed a brand new CEO, and this CEO is not actually brand new. Actually, has had some traction. In fact, Brian Niccolo, who was the CEO of Chipotle, is now going to be the new chairman and CEO starting September 9th of Starbucks. Now, Starbucks, of course, for those of you who've been to a Starbucks lately, you may have experiences, but let me know how your experience has been when you've been to Starbucks lately. Has it been just as good? Has it been different? Has there things that you feel like could improve? Well, Starbucks says that they've been struggling with declining sales and, of course, pressure from activist investors. And, there's been a lot of pressure in terms of changing leadership. So they've now brought in the CEO previously of Chipotle. Now, of course, this CEO, Brian, has been very, very successful at Chipotle, introducing new safety protocols, making operations much more modern, and significantly boosting business during his tenure at Chipotle. So they're saying that this could be a good thing, and people are many people are watching this very closely, and they're looking forward to seeing what the new CEO will bring to the company. And of course, former CEO Howard Schultz of Starbucks, of course, is iconic. So we'll see how this new change will come to be. And for those of you who've been to Starbucks lately, how do you feel about this? Do you think this is a great decision? Not a great decision? Curious to see how you feel about that. I definitely see Melanie joining us on LinkedIn Live. Thank you so much for joining us from Los Angeles. Beautiful. Weather's great today, so it's great to see you there. I see many of you joining us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, everywhere. Thank you so much for being here. All right, the next story I wanted to share with you, of course, is a change coming and being introduced by the Biden administration. The U.S. government has a new initiative, and they're hoping to really make a change that they think will better the way that we spend, and most importantly, the better in terms of our time. The U.S. government has launched the Time is Money initiative. I don't know about you. I absolutely agree with this. Time is definitely money, right? So they're trying to make it even easier for you and I to unsubscribe from memberships and reoccurring services, saying that it's just too much work. Federal agencies are introducing new regulations across industries, such as like gym memberships with fitness and media, like streaming services, healthcare, and other things, to prevent companies from making it really challenging for you and I to cancel services that at one point we subscribed for. So, the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, are definitely going all in with this. And FTC wants a click to cancel rule, which requires companies to simplify canceling our subscriptions. In fact, the Departments of Labor and Health and Human Services are also working to improve our interactions with health insurance companies, just to make sure that the customer service and the transparency from these health insurance companies continues to be in the best interest of consumers like you and I. Now, the initiative, of course, is building on existing government efforts, such as banning hidden fees in various sectors, banking, right? Airline mandating automatic cash refunds for flight delays is just an example. Now, these efforts, of course, are hoping to save consumers not only money, but also time by making it just so much easier and less frustrating for us to cancel services that we no longer need, because we know that when it takes a long time and it's quite an effort and it's annoying and frustrating to cancel, well, what happens? We end up keeping the service even though we don't need the service. And most importantly, this is just not good for our household budget, because we don't need things that we're not using anymore. We want to make sure that it makes it really easy for you to cancel and therefore save money into your household budget. And speaking of household budget, I want to talk about this story. And I thought this was really interesting in talking about robots. And now, if you've been to a restaurant lately, some of you may have actually seen a robot in your restaurant. Let me just say that actually, my kids' orthodontist, there's actually a robot there that greets people when they come in. But many restaurants now actually have robots. And so, talking about the future of automation in restaurants and talking about efficiency and whether or not this takes away from that human connection. This is an article shared in the New York Times talking about how restaurants are increasingly focused on customer facing roles with robots serving food and managing drive-throughs, while kitchen automation still kind of remains sort of limited. I'm guessing probably, automation is great for things such as dishwashing or like maybe food prep, things that are just, regularly very cumbersome for human employees. But despite technological advancements, the success of restaurant robots really hinges on human emotions, with consumers often, I'm hoping you're included, prefer to still deal with a human, especially when it comes to cooking. So that's a question. How do you feel about that? Do you prefer to have a human cook your food, or do you prefer to have a robot cook your food? Um, I'm sure, depending on if certain ingredients are more in season or fresher, that could impact the taste of your food, right? Which would be great for a human to test it to make sure this is okay. But that being said, I think we would agree there's also some really great roles that I would love to see a robot completely take over, such as, dishwashing and sanitizing of tables and, maybe even like cutting vegetables or prepping certain things. I could see would be very, very important to have a robot take care. I mean, having a robot maybe like wipe the tables, clean the restaurant, that I think for me, I would prefer that. But automation can certainly create anxiety amongst workers about job security. But when implemented with employee input, it does seem to be more successful. And of course, also reduce physical strain for the employees at these restaurants. Now, they're saying robots can definitely handle repetitive tasks, right? But in complex kitchen environments, consumers still have an expectation that humans are cooking the food. There's still a lot of roles within the restaurant, that customer service experience, how they make you feel. They're saying so that still makes full automation difficult, which I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I do think it's great to have maybe a partnership of robots and humans, and so that the customer has that full 360 experience. So, requiring most restaurants are saying they're probably going to need a hybrid human robot collaboration. And of course, with rising labor costs and economic benefits of driving interest into automation, there's going to be maybe more automation in certain regions with higher minimum wages, perhaps, where robots can offer a continuous operation without taking breaks and taking vacation or sick pay or sick days, right? Things like that. So customers, I feel like, are quite divided on the topic of robot assistants. So I'm curious to see how you feel about that. I do see Melanie making comments as this would be very helpful because, as you know, it's very difficult to cancel, talking about the subscription story that we just talked about. And thank you so much for your kind comment. Yeah, happy to share that. And I think it's important. I think it's important that we talk about that because it's not just about saving junk fees at the bank, credit cards, travel, airline fees, but also absolutely time is money. And if they make it really hard to unsubscribe and make it so easy to subscribe, this also costs us as Americans money, which does lead to us not having the economic means to pay for other things that are really important, like retirement and healthcare costs and education costs for our kids and things like that. So thank you so much, Melanie, for that feedback. But yes, back to this automated cooking. Curious to think how you feel about this. Let me just say that if there's more automation of cooking in restaurants, I can only imagine that they would come up with a simpler or less expensive option that perhaps we can bring into our kitchens at home. Which I don't know about you, but as a parent of three kids, that to me would be absolutely the biggest level up. And with that, let's take a look at the market. It just literally closed right now. The Dow closed up 406 points. Nasdaq also closed up 407 points. We love to hear that. And the S&P 500 closed up 90 points as well. So positive across the board, like we thought would happen. So that's awesome. Do me a favor, my friends, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe so you can stay updated on all the latest business content. Of course, to watch past full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun, please check out NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, Samsung, LG, Roku, and many other streaming platforms. And of course, all the newest and latest stories and shows are shared on my social media platforms where you are currently with me on. And of course, thank you so much for sharing the show and sharing the episodes online. Make sure to tag at Winnie Sun so I can make sure to thank you on a future episode. And with that, thank you so much for being here. We have a lot more coming to you this week. So be well. I'll see you again very soon. Take care now. Bye.